Hi, and welcome to Craft Along with Jay. I am so happy you could join me today. Today is going to be a little bit different what I normally do. I'm so excited to have joined an amazing group of crafters in the What Would You Make challenge. The hosts are Brenda from Rustic and Lace DIY and Christine from Divine Designs. The guest host this month is Cheryl over at Farmhouse Frugally. And when you're done with this video, check out the playlist down below in the description box. First, we'll use some clay, some mold, and some wooden eggs from Hobby Lobby, and I got them at 40% off, and a bunch of colors that I think is nice for Easter. You can choose any color that you desire. And I paint one egg in each color. And then I use a little bit of baking soda into the mold. It just helps release the clay better. And then I just get it down there in tight so you can see every detail of the design. And these are little bows. And I believe I got this mold from Hobby Lobby as well. And I just go around the edges with a skewer just to get some of that excess clay off. And I make a bunch of these. And then I got the other two molds out that I have with some flowers on it. I decided not to use the other one. It looked too bulky around the egg, so I kind of stuck with the shorter ones and just at the front of the eggs. It looks so much better. And I'm just using some wood glue to glue them on. And I glue them on while they're still kind of wet, so that way you can still kind of bend it and manipulate it to fit around your egg. And that egg was painted in the color sky blue. Yeah, the little clay flower kind of broke off at the end, but I kind of attached it, let it sit for a minute just to dry a little bit. Try to save it so I could still use it. And then I go at it while that's drying. I go at it with another mold. And I don't do the whole thing, it's too big. I just kind of do 4 flowers, the 2 at the top and then 1 on each side. And then I put some wood glue on it and glue it onto my egg. And I believe this is Ballet Pink, that egg. And that would be Vintage White. That seems to be my favorite white these days. And there they are, all dry. It's the next day. I let them dry overnight. And then I just take the corresponding colors and paint it over the clay. Then after I've painted all of them, I will let them dry. And then I go back. Looks like the next day again. I have a different shirt on with some Vintage White, and I just dry brush just to kind of pull out the design of the flowers and the leaves and bows and so forth. It really makes it look really pretty. You can see it kind of pulling out there. Gives it a really nice look. And then for the Vintage White one, I end up dry brushing with the green. I believe it's Green Villa Green, something like that. Anyway, off to the next project. Kind of cut off what it looked like when they were done, but you'll see that later. But I have some scrapbooking paper from Hobby Lobby, some wooden letters, a little moss bunny, a basket, some Easter eggs, and a wooden sign. And the first thing I do is cut a piece of the scrapbooking paper to fit inside the sign, the wooden sign. It actually fit in like so snug that I had a hard time getting it back out to put glue on it. So it was a perfect cut, actually. It doesn't happen very often. Yeah, I had to use my Cricut tool to help get it back out. And then I just used some Elmer's school glue and glue it in there. It's definitely not going anywhere now. I think it's such a nice spring background. Then I took my antique wax and I just painted over the basket. Kind of liked it a little bit darker. And I do all the way around and I do the bottom and the inside and the handle as well. I wish I could paint that fast in real life. I would be done in no time. Yeah, that's real life right there. It doesn't go that quick. And then I also use the antique wax on the letters. I brush them on and then I wipe it off and brush them on and wipe it off. I didn't want it too dark. And then I take some jute twine and I just kind of go around the edges on the inside of the box. Just give it a little extra outlining in there. It looks really nice. Kind of use my pencil to get it into the corner. It worked really well. Just give it a little bit more glue at the end. And then that's it for that part. Yep. And then I take my little moss bunny. I think he came in a pack of 3 from Hobby Lobby. And I glue it on one corner of the wooden box, a sign. Just like that. And then I take my basket and I glue that to upper, the opposite upper corner, like tilting downward. You can probably guess what's coming next. Kind of added some more hot glue around just for extra reinforcement. Yep, right there. Wanted to make sure that basket wasn't falling any more than it already is. Yep, you guessed it. I'm gluing my little Easter eggs into the basket and down onto um the wooden sign so they're falling out of the basket and down. And these Easter eggs, I got those from Hobby Lobby as well, 40% off. I can't remember the price. Um, but they're so pretty. They have like a metallic gold kind of look to them on top of the color. It's really pretty. And I kind of glue them all down, all the way over towards the bunny. So they're all falling and rolling. just like that. And then I take my letters and I glue them to the top of my sign and it will spell out the word Easter. And then just one last touch to this. Yep, you guessed it. Need some moss in there. I just put some along the bottom line in between the eggs. I use my little skewer to help getting it in there. That little skewer has actually become very handy. I've used it multiple times with projects. I need to make space for it in my little toolbox. And there you have it. Pretty cute. What do you think? All right, next I have this sign from the Dollar Tree. I got this He is Risen from my Cricut Design Space and some lambsy flowers and my antique wax and 5 Jenga blocks. And the first thing I do is painting on um, the antique wax and wiping off. And I do the entire block, all 5 of them. And then I'm going to take that string off with the beads. I don't need that for the front part of it. It comes off really easy. You kind of cut that tip off and then you can pull it right through. I didn't have to take it apart. I'm not doing anything with the frame. I kind of liked it the way it was. Kind of worked for what I was going to do. So I'll take a Jenga block and I'll put some wood glue and some hot glue and I'll glue it down onto my frame. And we'll glue them into a cross. Then at this point I'll take 2 blocks and I'll glue them together side by side before I glue them down onto my frame. Like that. And then they go on my frame. And I use my little tiny brush just to kind of clean up the glue that may have seeped out from under it. And then I take my transfer tape and put it over my word, scrape it onto it with my Cricut tool. And then I'll pull it right off. Yep, like that. And then I'll put it at the bottom of the frame next to the cross. Kind of push it down good with my finger and then my Cricut tool. And then slowly pull it off, making sure everything stays down. If it doesn't, you just rub some more until it releases like that. Then I'll take some Mod Podge and go over the He is Risen words. That's just to seal it in so it won't go anywhere. I already got a space ready for it on top of my mantle when it's done. Turned out really nice. I'm really pleased with it. So I'm proudly displaying it on my mantle. Then I take some of these flowers. I just cut some of the tops off and I add it to my cross right in the middle. I did a white, a pink, and a purple. And then I will glue some lamb's ear leaves around. Just kind of playing around with the placement a little bit before I glue it down. It's already starting to look really nice. Just two more leaves at the bottom. There we go. Then get some of those hot glue strings off. Then I end up deciding to glue two lamb's ear on the top bare part. They almost look like rabbit ears when I glue them down. That wasn't intentional. And then I just made a purple shoestring bow and glued that on top. I decided to do that instead of flowers, just to give it a little bit different look to it. And it looks really nice. Then I also glue the strings down because I kept wanting to stick straight out instead of laying down. So just a little dab of glue and it keeps them in place. Yep, like that. What do you think? It looks pretty good, doesn't it? And then that little string with beads that was at the front of the frame, I took the little clothes pin off and just glued in the back and used it as a hanger instead. And there it is. And for this last project, I believe this is the last one, there's a wooden crate, some wood from Hobby Lobby, and some wood slices, and I'm not using those, and some wooden mushrooms from the Dollar Tree, and then a little um, gnome door and windows and some gnomes, all from the Dollar Tree, and then of course the moss. You know, we in for a mess. The first thing I do is kind of figure out the placement of the door. It kind of the decision was made based on the little wood pieces there, how that will fit around. And I was actually quite lucky. I could put two on one side and three on the other. And then I just used some hot glue. And then I glued the first two. And after that, then I'll glue the door into place. Now everything doesn't fit as snug as it could. However, there's no worries about that because we will use some of that moss to fill in the gaps. It's still going to look very woodsy, like the little gnome houses out in the forest. There we go. And we go all the way around. And then when we get to the top part, we have to start measuring and then cutting them to size. And I used my big old miter saw from to cut them. It took some time, but it got done. And yeah, I have to cut them individually just to make sure that they fit without overlapping too much. There we go. And here's when I start measuring, and then I'll start cutting them down, and I glue them all on. See some cracks, but that's okay. That will get taken care of. And then I got my little windows, and I'll glue them to either side. The board that you see there on the table, I was going to use them for the roof, but it was giving me a hard time. So I ended up going to plan B, which was cutting out a piece of cardboard from a cardboard box and glue that to the top, like that. And don't worry, we'll do something with that too. Yep, here comes the mess. I just kind of cut it down to smaller pieces and mix it up. And then I start gluing it onto my roof. I'm telling you, it was a hot mess around there when I was done. But it was worth it. It looks so cute. And then there's wood strings, hot glue stick, wood strings everywhere. And he had to start filling in some of the larger gaps. And then up under where you could see some of the cardboard box or the cardboard. And then I start doing the same in the front. And then around the door, there's some gaps around the door. Just kind of use a sharp little tool to push it in there. Kind of trim where it's sticking out too much as well. But I didn't want to cut too much just because it's supposed to be natural out in the woods kind of look. And nothing out there is neatly trimmed. And then I took my little wooden mushrooms and I painted the tops red, crimson red, and the bottom of the stem, whatever you call it, I'll do that vintage white, and I'll also use the vintage white to make the dots on top of the mushroom. And I do all three of them the same way. And I just use the opposite end of a paintbrush to make my little dots. And there it is. I just glued them on to the house and one on the top. And here they all are. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end with me. I surely appreciate it. Now, don't forget to go down in the playlist in my description box to see everyone else. You won't be disappointed. I promise. And until next time.